Hey Dylan, and hello Facebook. We are live. This is Brendan Borman, and we are doing a live 270 stream. I've got Dylan Hales on the phone. Dylan is a competitor in the very first historical election series, which is being played throughout the 270 Lounge. We'll have several elections that we will revise and kind of relive. And actually, Dylan, who are you playing as today?
I am George Washington. Pretty excited about it. So I've got high expectations to live up to. He won unanimously, so we'll see if we can't make that happen.
Awesome. So Dylan is being played by George Washington, and he's going up against Luke Smith, who is playing as Benjamin Franklin. Of course, both of these candidates do have state groups, but in this matchup, we are reliving the 1789 election, so the very first election, which actually, as we all know, George Washington won, but not all of the states on this map are going to be a part of the election. So my job as Bernie Sanders, even though Bernie Sanders wasn't alive back in 1789, he's old enough that he looks like he could have been. So I'm playing as Bernie, and I'm just going to pip into all of the different open states. So looks like we've got some action here on turn number one. Both players are into Georgia. Connecticut is a really important state, as is Virginia, when you look at the cost per dollar. And so I'll go over that in just a little bit, but do want to give a shout out to Kevin Suthers. This is actually the second time we're playing this match. The first time I did have a technical issue. Kevin did win, and unfortunately he wasn't able to play today, so we do have Luke and Dylan going at it head to head. Now, I did zero turn spin the first time. I'm gonna go ahead and spin this next time. Hey Dylan, could you remind me some of the states that are not in play?
Yeah, so go ahead and block off Maine, Vermont, New York, Rhode Island, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, Alabama, and Florida. And if you're at your computer,
Yep.
do you have, or you could pull up my messenger and you can go to the pictures that I sent you. And if you're able to share your screen with the folks at home so they can see what the map looked like way back then. So a little historical fun facts for you. In the very first election, the way that they determined it, Electoral College back then was actually a little bit different than what it is now. It's actually a group of representatives that were selected by the individual states who met kind of like Congress meets now and voted one person to oversee the country as opposed to everyone voting directly. And so they unanimously selected George Washington as president. These group of men did. And so that's kind of cool. So the people who did not that had not ratified the Constitution at that point in time of the original 13 colonies were New York, North Carolina, and Rhode Island. And so they're not participating in this election. And so you might be thinking at home, well, I know so for me, for example, I knew North Carolina was one of the original 13 colonies because I lived here, and that's what we learned in elementary school. New York, if you're from New York, you might be thinking the same thing, but that's why we're not including them here in this version of the game.
Yeah, and so I know that we've talked before, and later editions of the game are going to include more and more states as we get later and later on into history, and it'll be interesting because state groups could actually come into play. So you look at the Old South, you look at town and gown, possibly even African American, these bonuses that players are used to. Now, one kind of fine tooth point here is that in the game, North Carolina is not in play, but it's worth 15 electoral votes. Virginia is worth 13, and that's not necessarily the case back then. But for all and purpose, our intentions are to keep it as simple as possible, and so whatever is listed on the 270 board, that's what these players are playing for. So it's just those 12 or so states. And so Bernie Sanders will actually win this match because I'll win the EVs, but it's really it's a battle for second place will be the actual winner between Benjamin Franklin, who's being played by Luke Smith, and we have Dylan Hales, the creator of this series, and he is being played by George Washington. I know the goal is to have future updates and future recreated elections, and so it'll be like King of the Hill. So whoever goes on to win this will actually get the chance to fight it off in the next election. So here we go. We're on to the second ballot, and you remember, ignore Bernie Sanders. I'm just creating a barrier so that people do not get confused and accidentally pip into a wrong state. So Tyler Oberlag joining us in the comments. The old Commonwealth, he says. So we have double pip into Pennsylvania. That's a huge electoral advantage. And then we have Ben Franklin going up in Virginia. He did not lock it. So maybe setting a trap, maybe just wanting to maximize his chance to get that state. So both players did clash in New Hampshire, and we had pretty much all of their money spent. So no one is really saving. We look at Franklin. Franklin's in Georgia. He's in Virginia. And he went into Rhode Island. So is Rhode Island, Dylan, is Rhode Island a part of this game?
Yeah, you had blocked it off. He wasn't supposed to go into that.
Okay, so that's okay, and that's an error, but that's okay. So that's just money lost. So think of that as like, someone. Yes, yeah, someone who they did an absentee ballot or something and it didn't work.
So you were talking about a minute ago why we created this. There's been a lot of folks posting in the lounge over the past few months. They noticed that little tagline that's in the rule book that we'll be creating new versions of the map. And or people were saying, how cool would it be if we could reenact an election between Abraham Lincoln, for example, and whoever he ran against, Stephen Douglas, I think is who it was. And this is kind of a way that for the people who are interested in that to do just that. I also think it's cool. I think we've seen Tyler. I'm not sure how you pronounce his last name. We'll call him Tyler B. Barola. He's posted a few different times about adding all the presidents to the game, which to me makes a lot of sense. And in doing so, it's cool because he shares a little bit about the history of each one of these guys, facts that you may not have known. And I think those facts are pretty important. Like, for example, the other day, John Adams got a negative AA bonus. The guy was an abolitionist and fought against slavery his whole life. And his son did as well. And so it's really interesting to kind of point out some of these historical facts. And I think they're important to note, too, because that it is our history. I think, to me, it's fun, at least, if nothing else.
Yeah, for sure. And so, and I apologize. I apologize to people here. I did do a 10-minute timer. Obviously, we're not doing 10 minutes, but that's I slid the bar as I was trying to send the code off to someone. So these guys hopefully will get their moves in pretty quickly. I've already submitted mine here.
No, I'm pretty sure we're waiting on you.
On me?
We're waiting on me. I'm busy talking and not playing the game. I'm getting a little preoccupied, but that's okay.
All good.
I will say, playing this stuff, man, it's so difficult because it's different. Anytime we do one of these games where it's different than what you've played before, it really messes with your mind. You're not really sure how you should go about it. The first time I played with Kevin, he did a phenomenal job of, does he not know, gosh, this guy, he just went up in North Carolina. I guess he didn't notice that it was also off limits. But could you text him that? Could you tell him that it's off limits?
I can try. Is he in that group chat?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can text him real quick. You'd like. But he came up with a pretty good strategy. He'd probably beat me again if he did it. Let's see. also move up in North Carolina and Rhode Island so that it's visually clear.
Yeah, and also, hey, if you don't have to, obviously, Dylan, but if you want to move up in North Carolina and Rhode Island, it would make the money even though I know it's his mistake. That's up to you.
That's not a bad idea. Let me throw out a peace offering here to him. Well, can you also text him and let him know I'm doing that?
So what we're doing is we are doing the recreation of the 1789 election. I'm going to go up in North Carolina and Rhode Island, so it's very clear not to spin in those states, but I'm also trying to build a barrier here where Bernie Sanders is going to win this, but that's not really what the competition is. It's to see who can get second place and ultimately win the most EVs. It's not necessarily 270 to win in this case. It is who can get the most EVs when you add up those individual states. So the game should take about 10 or 11 turns if I had to guess, and so we're on turn number 4. And so what's going to happen is Dylan's going to spin up in Rhode Island and in North Carolina just to ensure that the math is fairly similar. So I don't know if the players are going to zero spend except for that. That could be an interesting turn of events when you have a lot of players or a lot of money in each player's hands. And so it looks like Connecticut is locked by Franklin. So that's 7 EVs that are going to Franklin no matter what. Georgia, a little bit more defense. And then I went up in North Carolina just to signal, hey, don't spin any states. But Dylan is a good sport, and he's matching. But Virginia is stolen. So we got an all-in play for Virginia, and it works. That is a very big deal. Virginia has a very high cost per dollar ratio, and so those 13 EVs with Franklin spinning up to like the 6th or 7th pip, that's going to be pretty big deal. So 7th pip. Okay, so we're back to square one here. We have Franklin, who is in, I don't believe he's in Massachusetts yet, and he's not in Delaware or in South Carolina. We have Washington, who is in all of the states. Again, West Virginia was not a state back then, but we are including it as it was a part of Virginia. So, everything look good on your end, Dylan?
All right, let me just verify and double check. So we've got South Carolina.
And while you're doing that, I'm going to pip up into some more states in the West because the game will not end until, of course, a ballot is triggered when there are 100 EVs locked in, and every state has been entered into without a clash.
I hope Luke is listening to this. We're about to talk about play-by-play strategy. So it was really cool. You were saying that Virginia was obviously a high price or a low price to EV ratio, but so is Connecticut. And so we both stole there. I think, though, that the advantage would have to lean towards Washington because Franklin spent so high in that, trying to defend it the whole time, where I only had put 1 pip, or Washington had only put 1 pip into Connecticut. I won't tell you what I'm going to do here, but I have an idea of if I were him, what I would be doing. I would probably be locking out Georgia right now, and I would, if I were him, try to do a Pennsylvania still. I'm going to say this. He could be listening. Who cares? I'm going to go up a couple pips into Pennsylvania just to keep it competitive, but he's not really putting on too much pressure everywhere else. So what I learned is that zero spending can be a good idea because it continues to put pressure on the opponent to overspend.
Absolutely. Yeah, New Jersey is not that great of a cost per dollar state, but it's also 14 EVs, and EVs definitely matter.
he blocked out Georgia. That's huge. Huge there. But, I mean, you could also look at it and say maybe he overspent, didn't have to spend all that money. So locked it out. I only put 1 pip in it. There was something else I wanted to share with you earlier. One thing that he did do by blocking off Georgia, that locked off a huge clash in Pennsylvania. What a move. What a move on my part. He should have been listening to a live stream. He would have known I would have done that. Anyway, something else is cool. Just sharing some facts about these guys and who they are. A lot of us know a lot of us think we know who George Washington is. But at the same time, historically, a lot of people don't actually know who he is or know much about him and his character. I did think that, there's the famous fable where he cut down the cherry tree and that sort of thing. But not a lot is known about him as a person. Apparently, I've been doing some research into a lot of the early presidents. He was pretty reclusive, kind of reserved figure. But when he talked or whenever he got angry, he was fairly pretty passionate about things, which I think is kind of neat.
Yeah, for sure. And no, everyone remembers who wins, but and also, Benjamin Franklin. I know when I was little, I thought he was a president. It's like, wait, he wasn't. I used to get confused with Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin all the time, and talking about George Washington, everyone remembers him as this hero, and he was a great president. And if he was running today, I don't know how he'd do. But looking at these stats of these characters, what do you think about George Washington? Your point is Washington right now. He's got a 40% ag bonus. That's his highest bonus. 25% manufacturing. He's got an Old South. He does have penalties in high tech, Latino, and African American. So he plays more like a Republican candidate, especially with the labor environment and women's move negatives as well. What do you think about Washington, Dylan?
Dude, hate the penalties. One would say, you've been adamant about Ronald Reagan being one of the few folks that had a landslide type victory, and how he's underpowered. One would say the same thing about George Washington. I mean, the guy won unanimously. I think he owned a slave. He didn't have a ton of slaves. I don't know why he had. I guess owning any slave is bad, right? But he certainly was not. I wouldn't say he should have a negative AA penalty there. I think that he should have no penalties and should have a little better path to winning. I've been playing in the lounge with Thomas Jefferson here recently, and you and I have talked about the Old South, that swing to AA strategy. And Thomas Jefferson is actually a character that does that pretty well. He's a little versatile. He's the one that, if you look at his stats, I know we're talking about George Washington, but if you look at his stats, he doesn't seem like that would be kind of the route that you would go. But it's a viable option for him.
Here we are. We got the ballot. So we got Bernie Sanders, who is, again, not participating. He's just entering the state so we can have a ballot. We have Dylan Hales, who is leading 89-23 as we enter into the turn 6 ballot. We've got big defense in New Jersey and big defense in Pennsylvania. So we have a fairly low spend by Franklin. So Franklin taking a book out of George Washington's strategy here, making Dylan decide where he wants to spend his money. That could be a really interesting play, Dylan, is if you decide to low spend yourself and make him follow through with his bluff, because a clash would obviously be detrimental. But I don't know. You at some point you just have to lock it in all the EVs you can. Do you know the number that you have to get to win the game? Have you done the math on that?
You act like I'm an expert player here. 69 would be half of the No, that was the historical one. So don't give me a second. I can tell you. I can tell you one thing. I'm winning, so that's helpful.
Tyler DeMora is saying, I think it's first to 57. Does that sound right? Was that
Yeah,
low?
that's about what it was last time. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Yeah, that's what it was last time.
Awesome. So yeah, we got Tyler DeMora and Tyler Oberlag in the comments. I actually went to high school with Tyler Oberlag and recruited him to play this game a while back. He is not very good yet, but he's learning.
Don't put people on blast like that. That's not nice, man.
Well, I've offered to help him try to get better, but we'll see. We'll see how it works out. Of course, you know, if you want to get better, you can always follow me on YouTube and watch some of my videos at 270 videos. It's been growing. I'm excited. The game is growing, and you know, it's kind of cool. You know, the community does elections like this that are not a part of the game, but you know, maybe you got a different rooting interest that you can watch this and have some fun. So the clock's turning down on turn 7. I believe I've entered into all the states. So as soon as you guys get to 100 EVs locked in, there will be a ballot.
Yeah, we might need your help with that in the event that there's like some odd tie.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the state I would have stole if I was him. He might have been afraid.
So there goes Massachusetts, Maryland. New Jersey is locked off at 14. So that is a grand total of 27, 31 EVs locked in for Mr. George Washington. Of his 63, 31 are locked in. If you look at Benjamin Franklin, who did pick up 26 on that last round, he has 49 total, and he has 23 locked in. So he's only 8 behind you. He does have a substantial lead in Maryland, a substantial lead in Massachusetts. Now, this is where the game theory comes into play. Do you make you decide where you're going to steal? Do you just lock it out and then try to flip one state or 2 states coming down the end here? That's what's really going to be interesting. So, Pennsylvania, that's a big one. That's 20 where you're ahead. Let's just give you Pennsylvania. So that would be 51. So you'd only need 6 more.
No, I just redid the math. Yeah, I think this is a ball game. I think that, yeah, like you said, I lock in Pennsylvania. I'm going to lock in Delaware too. That gives me 54 locked in. I might just screw around with them the rest of the game and see what happens.
Okay. Sounds like a Dylan Hales kind of thing to do.
Yeah, so that's good, yeah.
So West Virginia is 5. Let's see what happens here.
So in the meantime, I'll give you some more facts about George Washington, things that you might not know. He was an avid farmer. He once said, "Liberty, when it begins to take root, is a plant of rapid growth." Think about that. It is well, I die hard, but I am not afraid to go. Famous last words.
I'm going to lock out my home state of Missouri because I can.
You did this last time. You ended the game too early. How can I possibly take everything?
I'm just going to end Missouri and that'll be it. But I have ADD, so I've got to do something.
Another great George Washington quote: "Truth will ultimately prevail where there is no pains to bring it light." You got any good quotes from George Washington?
Yes, I have one really good quote from George Washington. As there's a flip in South Carolina.
I wanted him to do the flip. Oh, Missouri's locked in.
Yeah, Missouri's locked in.
Flipping West Virginia. I didn't want to break up the Virginias just yet. I felt like they ought to vote together in this thing.
We have a ballot round, and my famous quote from George Washington is, "Don't believe everything you read on the internet."
He did say that.
George Washington.
Let me make sure I didn't miss any states here. I think everything's locked out. Tell you what, I won't be doing the in-game analysis. We thought that might be a fun thing to do. It is dreadfully painful coming up with things to say and try to figure this game out at the same time.
Now, obviously, this game wasn't as in-depth as future games will be because there could be bonuses in play. And so, if you enjoyed this, even a little bit, even if it was my annoying commentary or the having Dylan on live, we encourage you guys to check out future installments of the Historical Election Series. And those will be on the lounge. And you can also find those on my YouTube channel. I'm going to make a sub-channel for that, a playlist. So that is
and
go ahead.
If you're watching and you find it interesting, you feel like you'd like to play in the next map. Do you have that map available? I might be able to pull it up real quick, but I can't share my screen because I'm on the phone.
Yeah. So I'm sharing my screen through through Facebook, and I'm not on OBS, so I don't believe I can. But
well, let me say this: if you're interested in playing in the future, so the next couple of states that get added to the game are Kentucky, North Carolina, New York, and Vermont. And so, like you were saying, things start to become a little bit more interesting. You could get town and gown in that game. It doesn't do you a lot of good, but it does help in defending those states. You can get the Old South in that. You could have gotten the Old South in this game, but he blocked that off pretty early with the Virginia and Georgia pips that he did. So it starts to become a little bit more interesting as you have to think about what path you're going to take to victory and how that changes over time. And I think that's a lot of fun. I played a couple of matches around before we decided to stream this, and it was a lot of good fun. And so what we'll do next time is we'll get somebody else to challenge me. Again, like you just said, Brendan, we'll do King of the Hill. Until somebody knocks me off, I'll keep playing as whoever the winning person should be. So next time I'll play as George Washington, and then I'll play as John Adams. And if I win, then we've got some interesting people in the group. If you're interested in joining the group, just give us a quick comment, and we'll add you into the Facebook Messenger group that we've got going on.
Awesome. Well, that sounds good. And congratulations, Dylan. I know Troy Moore. He's a really good player. He's going to be doing one of these pretty soon. Joining your league. We've added several players to the group chat in the last couple of days. So I think it was a great idea. Thank you for commissioning this, and hopefully we can continue to have some fun. Do you have any last words?
Yeah. Let me give you one final quote, this time from Benjamin Franklin. An investment in knowledge always pays the best interest. So keep tuning in, learn a little bit about our presidents, learn a little bit more about how the Electoral College came to be, why it was important in our history, and I think you'll have a lot of fun with us.
Awesome. And we've already got one person in the comment. We've got Sean Hartman saying he's really interested in being involved in this. So, Sean, we will send you a message. And with that, this is Brendan Borman and Dylan Hales signing off. And until next time, we'll catch you guys in the next Historical Election 270 video. Thanks, Dylan.